Shackles of the Empire. The Galactic Empire did not simply conquer. It consumed. Worlds fell one after another, their skies darkened by orbital dreadnoughts, their governments dissolved into ash. To resist was not only futile but suicidal. Yet even in the choking shadow of imperial banners, humans had carved out a reputation that unsettled their oppressors. Their soldiers fought long after surrender should have broken them. Their colonies rebuilt ruins into fortresses. And at the heart of their defiance stood one figure whose very name was whispered as a curse, Baba Yaga. The Empire called her the Witch of Earth. A commander without peer, she had led uprisings across 4 systems, leaving behind wrecked garrisons and humiliated admirals. Some claimed she could vanish into smoke, others that her eyes glowed with fire when she fought. But the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. She was human, unrelenting, and unafraid of monsters in uniform. Her capture was supposed to end it all. The raid came on a shattered mining moon where Baba Yaga's forces had been gathering weapons. The Empire unleashed not 1 but 3 legions, supported by mechanized war machines and hunter drones. For 3 days the tunnels shook with the fury of battle, and when the smoke cleared, she was dragged from the rubble in chains, her body blooded yet unbowed. They did not kill her swiftly. The Emperor himself decreed that her punishment must be spectacle. On a cold station orbiting a dead world, thousands of soldiers gathered in the steel amphitheater. Holofeeds carried the event to 100 planets. The stage was a cage of shimmering energy fields, calibrated to display every scream, every drop of blood. Baba Yaga was cast inside, stripped of armor, her hands bound in magnetic cuffs. The Overseer, an insectoid creature with glassy eyes and serrated mandibles, spoke for the crowd. "Behold humanity's witch," it rasped. "This is what becomes of those who defy the eternal empire." She did not lower her gaze. Her voice, hoarse but steady, carried through the amplifiers. "Empires fall. Tyrants rot. But humanity endures. You think you have killed our spirit. You've only proven your fear of it." The first lash of energy struck her spine, hailing her against the wall. Sparks leapt across her skin. The crowd roared, not in triumph, but in nervous exhilaration. Every soldier there wanted to believe they were watching the death of a legend. The torment continued for hours. Alien devices probed her nerves, ignited her blood with chemical fire, shattered bones only to knit them back together so the pain could be repeated. Her body convulsed, broken again and again. But her defiance did not falter. Even as screams tore free, they carried an edge of challenge, daring her captors to do worse. At last, when her heart faltered and breath ceased, silence fell over the amphitheater. Monitors flatlined. The Overseer announced her death in a voice dripping with satisfaction. "She is no more. Humanity's hope dies with her." They left her body in the cage for all to see. Soldiers watched, some in relief, others unsettled by the lingering unease that hung over the room. For so long, Baba Yaga had been the nightmare that stalked their ranks. To see her still, lifeless and fragile, felt unreal. Across the galaxy, the broadcast ended with a final image. The Witch of Earth sprawled in defeat. A warning. A declaration. The Empire believed it had broken the unbreakable. But as the guards filed out and the Overseer dismissed the crowd, no one noticed the faint twitch of her fingers. No one saw the faintest pulse ripple through veins that should have been empty. In the silence of the cage, Baba Yaga's lips curled, ever so slightly, into a ghost of a smile. Death, it seemed, had not taken her. The impossible return. 4 to 5 minutes had passed since Baba Yaga's heart stopped beating. On the observation deck above the amphitheater, Imperial officers filed their reports with clinical detachment. The Witch of Earth was dead, her remains destined for dissection in the Empire's biolabs. The Overseer relaxed his mandibles, satisfied. The spectacle had worked. Fear would ripple across 100 colonies, rebellion snuffed out before it spread further. And then the monitors began to beep. At first, it was a single tremor, dismissed as residual energy interference. But the pulse grew stronger. A flat line shifted into a steady rhythm. Electrodes on her chest flickered alive, registering movement where there should be none. The technician at the console leaned closer, disbelief etched across his features. So, the subject's vitals are returning. The overseer hissed in irritation. Impossible. She was executed. Verify the equipment. The technician obeyed, recalibrating. The readings only sharpened, heart rate accelerating, lungs drawing breath, synapses sparking like wildfire. And then, on the amphitheater floor, Baba Yaga opened her eyes. They were no longer the eyes of a prisoner. They blazed, cold and terrible, with a fire that froze every soul watching. Her wounds were still visible, burns tracing her arms, fractures along her ribs, but she rose to her knees as though none of it mattered. The silence in the chamber was total. Hundreds of soldiers, armed and armored, stood frozen, the discipline faltering before the sight of a woman who had just died and yet now lived. "Did you miss me?" Her voice was hoarse but steady, carrying across the cage with mocking defiance. The overseer's mandibles clacked in panic. "Contain her. Restrain her now." Energy fields surged, sending arcs of power through her body. She convulsed, fell back to the ground, and then laughed, raw and terrible. The shocks that had killed her once no longer seemed enough. Whispers spread through the ranks. "She cannot be killed." Some remembered human myths, deathless witches, warriors who bargained with the grave. Others clung to reason, insisting it was some unknown regenerative trait. But none of that mattered to the soldiers who had just watched the impossible. Their fear was real, and it grew with every second she continued breathing. Baba Yaga rose again, shackles sparking at her wrists. She pressed her hands against the restraints until the metal cut deep, her blood dripping onto the floor. Yet the sight did not weaken her image, it amplified it. Wounded, blooded, unbroken. "Empires fall," she whispered again, louder now, her words echoing. "And I will be there to watch yours burn." Security drones descended, weapons primed, but hesitation rippled through the guards. Who would fire first at something that death itself had rejected? Some stepped back, their grips loosening on rifles. The overseer shrieked orders, but panic was spreading faster than command could contain it. Meanwhile, deep within her, Baba Yaga felt a strange duality. She remembered the moment her heart stopped, the cold, the fading of light. She remembered nothingness, yet she also remembered returning, as though death had been a locked door she had simply pushed through. She did not know how or why. She only knew she was no longer bound by fear of mortality. That realization hardened into resolve. The Empire thought her legend had ended. Instead, they had transformed it. Across the stars, the broadcast had ended prematurely, but not before millions had seen her last breath. Now, if word spread that she lived again, the lie of her defeat would collapse. Rebellion would no longer be a whisper, it would be a storm. The overseer, trembling, activated the emergency protocols. Gas hissed into the chamber, thick clouds meant to sedate even the strongest captives. Baba Yaga staggered, coughing as the haze burned her lungs. Her body fell against the cage wall, vision blurring. But her last thought before darkness took her was not despair. It was fury. "You cannot kill me. Not anymore." She collapsed, unconscious but alive, her heartbeat steady. The guards dared not approach until the gas cleared. When they finally dragged her body away, none spoke aloud the truth every one of them knew. The Witch of Earth had returned, and nothing the Empire had could keep her in chains for long. Fire in the shadows. The Empire's mistake was believing cages could hold what death itself had failed to claim. Baba Yaga awoke in a sterile cell deep within the station's laboratories. Steel walls hummed with containment fields, sensors glowed red above her, and her limbs were bound in reinforced restraints. Tubes ran into her veins, siphoning blood into machines that pulsed and whirred, analyzing every drop. Around her, alien scientists whispered in their clicking, hissing tongues, debating the anomaly she had become. She lay still at first, feigning weakness. Every whisper confirmed what she already knew. The Empire did not plan to kill her again. They planned to study her, to dissect her secret, and weaponize it. She would not let them. Hours bled into days. Sedatives coursed through her veins, but they dulled her only for moments before her body burned them away. She learned the rhythm of her captors, the guards' rotations, the scientists' routines, the lull of the machinery. Every detail she committed to memory. On the fourth cycle, opportunity arrived. A careless technician leaned too close, adjusting the straps around her arm. Baba Yaga's eyes snapped open. With a sudden jerk, she twisted her wrist until bone cracked against metal, and kept going, the fracture meaningless. She slid free of the restraint, her hand snapping around the alien's throat. The scientist's eyes bulged, a strangled gasp escaping before silence claimed him. Alarms blared, but she was already moving. She tore free of the remaining bonds, ignoring the tearing of flesh, her body healing as she moved. Two guards stormed in, rifles raised. She slammed the dead technician's body into the first, wrenching the weapon from his grip and firing point-blank into the second. The corridor erupted into chaos. Drones swarmed, sirens wailed, soldiers shouted orders. But panic spread faster than discipline. Whispers of her impossible revival had already poisoned morale. Now they saw her with their own eyes, alive, unstoppable, her wounds knitting as she fought. Some fired blindly, others faltered, unwilling to face the Witch of Earth. She cut through them like shadow and fire, not with brute force alone, but with precision. Every strike targeted fear as much as flesh. A soldier disarmed and left screaming, another pinned to the wall with his own weapon, each scene feeding the legend. By the time she reached the docking bay, blood and smoke trailed her steps. A squad of enslaved humans, workers pressed into labor for the Empire, watched from behind cargo crates. Their eyes widened as recognition dawned. "It's her," one whispered. "She lives." Baba Yaga tossed the captured rifle at their feet. "Do you live as slaves?" she asked, her voice a growl. "Or do you fight as humans?" Their hesitation lasted only a breath. They seized the weapons, rallying behind her. In that moment, she became more than a fugitive. She became the spark of rebellion. Together, they stormed a transport shuttle. Blast of fire rained across the hangar, but every death she suffered was brief. A shot through her chest dropped her for a moment, but when she rose again, coughing blood and smiling through the pain, the enemy line collapsed in terror. Soldiers fled rather than face her again. The shuttle's engines roared to life. With the enslaved crew at her side, Baba Yaga blasted free of the station, streaking into the void. Behind them, the once proud garrison lay in ruins, shaken to its core by the legend it had failed to silence. But freedom was not enough. As the shuttle drifted into the black, she stood before her ragged allies, her body scarred but unbowed. "The Empire thought me broken. They thought me dead. Let them keep thinking it." Her gaze swept the group, hard and fierce. "We will strike from the shadows. Every outpost, every patrol, every overseer who dares set foot on our worlds. We will make them remember that humanity does not kneel." The enslaved workers, once beaten and hopeless, now looked at her as something more than mortal. A revenant, a weapon of vengeance, a leader who would not die. In the silence of space, her vow rang louder than the engines. "They called me witch. They called me monster. Let them, for I will be the nightmare that haunts them. Fire in the shadows, death that does not end, the beginning of their fall." And with that, the Witch of Earth vanished into the void, not as prey, but as the hunter, the witch who would not die. The Empire could no longer laugh at whispers of the Witch of Earth. Whole garrisons abandoned posts at the rumor of her approach. Patrols scattered, convoys rerouted, commanders replaced in disgrace. Each raid she led spread terror wider, every death she suffered, and every return, fueling a legend that grew faster than the Empire could contain. They had to end it. The Emperor himself ordered her destruction. No more experiments, no more broadcasts. He dispatched the Eternal Spear, a fortress ship bristling with weapons, escorted by 3 full legions. Its mission, annihilate Baba Yaga and any who followed her. But the witch did not hide. She chose the battlefield. It was on a barren moon orbiting a gas giant where the Empire stored fuel reserves for its fleets. The depot was heavily guarded, but its destruction would cripple supply lines. Baba Yaga gathered her fighters, escaped humans, defected aliens, deserters who had chosen the legend over their masters. They numbered barely 1,000 against tens of thousands, but their eyes burned with the same fire as hers. "They think fear will break us," she told them, her scarred hands clenched around a stolen rifle. "They think numbers will drown us. Let them. Tonight, we prove fear can cut deeper than any blade." The battle began in silence. Her rebels struck first, sabotage charges ripping through hangars and fueling stations, flames painting the night sky. The fortress ship descended in fury, unleashing its armies. And Baba Yaga walked into the storm. She led from the front, her body a banner of defiance. Plasma fire shredded her torso, grenades tore her limbs apart. Each time she fell, the rebels cried out in despair. And each time, she rose again, her wounds sealing, her stride relentless. The sight turned despair into frenzy. Her fighters hurled themselves at the enemy, shouting her name like a war cry. Alibaba Yaga! Alibaba Yaga! The Empire's legions broke ranks. Soldiers who had never known defeat faltered, seeing death refuse its due. Commanders bellowed orders, but fear spread faster than discipline. Some fled, others fired wildly, convinced no weapon could silence her. Still, the eternal spear loomed above, its cannons tearing craters into the moon. Victory was not yet hers. She knew she must strike at the heart. With a cadre of rebels, she cut a path through collapsing lines and stormed the fortress ship. Inside, corridors ran slick with smoke and blood. Every defense the Empire placed before her crumbled. Not because her flesh could not be torn, it was torn again and again, but because her will never wavered. At last she reached the command deck. The Admiral waited there, a towering reptilian creature clad in ceremonial armor, flanked by his guards. His voice thundered with outrage. "You are no woman. You are abomination. You cannot be allowed to exist." Baba Yaga spat blood and smiled. "Then stop me, if you can." The duel was brutal. Blades clashed, rifles cracked, explosions rocked the deck. She died twice more in the struggle, once run through the chest, once burned alive in plasma fire. Each time she collapsed, the Admiral roared in triumph, only to watch her rise again, smoke still curling from her body, eyes blazing brighter. At the third rising, his guard broke. His soldiers fell back, terror-stricken, and Baba Yaga drove his own blade through his chest, pinning him to the command throne. "Empires fall," she whispered in his ear, "and yours burns tonight." With a final thrust, she killed him. The rebels seized the ship's controls, turning its cannons on the Empire's fleet. The once invincible Eternal Spear became the spear-pount of rebellion, ripping through its own legions before detonating in a blaze that lit the stars. The battle ended not with silence, but with chants echoing across the battlefield. Humans and aliens together shouted her name, no longer as a warning, but as a promise. Baba Yaga stood amid the wreckage, her body scarred, her armor blackened, yet her gaze unbroken. She knew the war was far from over. The Empire was vast, its armies endless, but it had lost something more vital than ships or soldiers. It had lost fear's grip. From that day forward, every planet under Imperial rule whispered the same legend. The witch who died, and died, and died again, yet never stayed dead. The witch who would not bow. The witch who would not break. The witch who would not die. And with her, humanity's vengeance had only just begun.